Preparing for job interviews is an extremely important task to undertake. Thorough preparation so that when you walk in for the job interview, you feel relaxed, you feel prepared, you've thought about the key messages, you've thought about the key questions, you've got good work examples ready to go. But I just want to give you some tips on how to prepare in a practical sense, because I find a lot of my clients want to write out long-winded answers and try and remember those answers. That, generally speaking, doesn't work unless you're a very exceptional human being who can remember verbatim what you've written down. That as a technique is a bit flawed. I highly recommend that you practice recording your answers into an iPhone or a Samsung or whatever phone you've got. Record your answers. Listen to the answers and then play them back and keep refining. That actual verbalization is really important, and it gets you off the page and off your notes and starting to think about your tone, your structure, how you're making your points, how you're getting the key information across. Now, the reality is you can predict the questions almost to a T that you're going to be asked. You can predict that they're going to be focused on, your experience, because experience is a very good predictor of the future. Past, how you've operated in the past is how, you might operate in that company going forward. So they're going to ask behavioral, competency-based questions, which will give you an opportunity to showcase your past experience. So the first step when you're preparing for interview is to clearly identify what are the top 5 to 10 competencies that you need to demonstrate in the interview. I would do a cheat sheet and, I'd write the competencies down in the left-hand column, and then in the middle column, I'm going to write down against each competency, what is the best example I have that demonstrates I have that competency, and that competency is to a high level and it can add value to the company. So I am going to make a clear decision before I go into job interview which examples I'm going to showcase, for example, leadership, teamwork, being able to achieve results, being able to negotiate with key stakeholders. I'm going to predetermine what examples I'm going to use in the job interview. That's a very important step. The second part of that equation is you must be able to explain the example in one sentence. This is another huge mistake that people make, is they get very convoluted trying to explain the example, and they miss the opportunity to talk about what they did, how they did it, the challenges they faced, the opportunities that came their way, and the results for the company. So that's a STAR methodology that we're talking about there, and you really want to keep that the example itself very succinct so you can spend more time talking about the important content that the employer is going to be really interested in. And obviously you want to try and pick examples that really would relate to that company you're interviewing for. So use a little bit of an educated guess. Think about what challenges they might be facing. Think about the problems that they may have identified in the job description, and try and address that with the examples that you choose. And then on my cheat sheet in the final column, so I've got the competency, the example I'm going to use, and then in the final column I might have 2 or 3 bullet points that are the cherries on top that I want to remember to talk about to the employer. So the cherry on top might be I was given a massive award by the CEO. I was the employee of the year. I won a massive contract, and this contract was a watershed moment for the company. I drove profitability by 15%, and that resulted in us being able to open up into a new market. So your bullet points are not war and peace, but just joggers, memory joggers, so that you can remember the key things you really want to highlight, which make the example and the information you're giving to the future employer very interesting and put some context around the information. So do a cheat sheet, number 1. Number 2, prepare by actually recording your answers. Practice them on your phone, record them, replay them, listen to your tone, listen to the structure, Are you getting your key points across? Are you remembering the key information? And I would do that for each competency 2 or 3 times so that I've really got my answer down pat. The more you practice, the more likely it is you're going to recall a lot of that information when you go in the interview itself. You're going to come across as very polished. You're going to know where you're going to go with your information. You're not having to think on the run and try and think of an example that would relate. You've made those predeterminations before the interview commenced. And of course, that will really pay good dividends for you in the interview itself. I can guarantee you that if you provide that content, that level of detail, you will come across extremely well and you'll probably ace the interview.